Hi there, viewers. Today I'm joining a conversation with David Wilson, the author of Mass Dinner. It's a pleasure to have David featured on English Literature. Welcome on the show, David.
Thank you very much, Peter. I am so happy to be here today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you featured on the show.
Oh, I'm ready. I'm
Yeah,
ready.
that's great. So, David, tell us about your book, Mass Diner. How does this book come about? What inspired you to write the book?
Ma's Diner is actually my third book,
Oh,
and it's the second part to two seasons. So there's two books in the series, and the inspiration behind the books had to do with my own father. He was
oh,
a storyteller. He loved to tell stories, and he was in the armed forces. So a lot of his stories were about his time in the army. Some of his stories were about hunting and fishing because we're a very rural state. And as his son, I get to hear these stories over and over and over again. So I decided that at some point I wanted to document my father's stories and things that we had done together. We did a lot of hunting and fishing and camping together.
oh,
So what I did in two seasons is I created a town and a cast of characters and a primary character, and I took those stories and I fit them to each character. So each character is a representation of my father or myself,
oh,
and I added humor to it because that was my goal, was to have humor novels. I think there's just way too much drama and seriousness in the world.
yeah,
I want people to just smile and laugh.
yeah.
So that's what I did with two seasons. But as I was writing that book, there was more that I wanted to do with the character. So Ma's Diner is the second part to two seasons, but the difference is that Ma's Diner is all made up. It's just
Oh,
all from the imagination. Because I had already written about the adventures and the stories. But while I was writing that, there were so many more things that I wanted to do with the character that I knew there was going to be a second book.
oh,
So the two books are they're a fictitious town in the state of Maine in USA. There are a whole bunch of crazy characters, and the primary character, who's an older lady. She's crabby, she's opinionated. You might say she's mean,
oh,
but oh yeah, but she really isn't at her core. That's just how she comes across, and that's what's so funny about her, is that she loves everybody, but
oh,
she'll never tell you that. Uh, so that's what the two books are. It's Maine based, Maine USA based. So a lot of folks from this area, they recognize the feel of the book because there's a very nostalgic feel. I
oh,
grew up in the 70s, and I liked that time period. It was a simpler time period. It was before cell phones, before video games, and those type of things. So when you're reading the book and you get a feel for this village that they live in, you really feel that you're back there, back in that time. But again, the entire goal of the books were just to make people smile, just to take people away from everyday life for just a
mm,
little while.
yeah. I love that. I love the sound of the book. It's really sounds
Thank you.
quite
Thank
interesting
you.
to me. Now, you also have another book titled Two Seasons. For readers like me who haven't read two seasons yet, without giving much information away, could you have a sneak of what we'd expect picking up two seasons?
Yeah, and again, what you're going to do is you're just going to smile. It's just,
Oh,
you're going to read about a little town in Maine. You're going to read about all the different folks that live there, and you're going to read about how they interact with each other. And um, each chapter is like sitting around a campfire and telling a campfire story,
oh,
about a time that you went hunting, or a time you went fishing, or even a time that you went to work. It's just different characters telling these different stories, almost in a narration style.
mm,
But again, and I mentioned this in the book, the inspiration was people that I've known. So every character in the book is somebody that I have known throughout my life,
oh,
including myself. I see myself in those characters as well, and a lot of my father. And I include pictures. So if I write a chapter and the chapter was based on truth, And you're reading this chapter and you're going, that could never have happened. Well, there's photographs at the end of the chapter to prove that it did happen at some point, either in my father's life or in my life. So it's not really a memoir, but it is based on things that actually happened.
That's great. I love the fact that the characters are all of these ways, and it really sounds quite fascinating to me. Thank you so
Thank you.
much for mentioning it. Now,
Yes.
David, as authors, we all have different ways of reacting to feedbacks and criticism of our works. I'm curious to know your opinion about criticism. How do you react to negative criticism of your book, if you've ever had one in time past?
Yeah, and I realize that as authors that we're always going to receive reviews that we might not feel are favorable.
Yeah.
And I'm a little split on that. If somebody reads my book and they didn't like the content because it just wasn't something they wanted to read, I have a little problem with that, with them criticizing that. Now, if somebody reads my book and they said I misspelled every word or I made a lot of grammatical errors or things like that, I'm certainly going to take that in a positive way and do better next time.
Yeah.
But if somebody just, I'm of the opinion that being an author, and you know this, Peter, being an author is tough.
Absolutely.
It's tough to, it's tough to write a book. It's tough to market a book. People put their heart and soul into their writing. So I look at everybody's book that way, that, they put a lot of work into that. I'm going to find something good in it, even if it wasn't something that I would normally read. So I look at criticism that way, that if you're going to criticize my work just because you don't like humor novels or you don't like memoirs, I have a little bit of a problem with that, because that you read, if you read the book jacket, you knew what it was going to be about. If you didn't want to read it, don't read it.
Absolutely.
But if certainly if somebody's looking at my books and they're finding mistakes in it, which I hope they don't have, but let's say that was the case.
Yeah.
And they criticize me because of grammar, I'm certainly going to appreciate that, because that just means it makes me want to do better next time.
Absolutely. That's great. I love your thought of these questions, and your answer are quite educative. I love that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Also, David, I see that you have a memoir titled Peanut Butter Memoirs. I love the title. Could you tell us about the making of it too?
Yeah, sure. So when I was writing Two Seasons, my career was being a police officer. That's what my career has been. And of course, in Maine, we're very rural. We don't have huge populations. We have lots of forests, and it's just very rural. So being a police officer in a location like that is very different than the stuff that we see on television, big cities and lots of folks. Very often I worked alone, and my career was over 20 years long. So that, a lot of things happened. And when I started writing that, I wrote it more as a diary. I really wanted to document things that I had done. I also think that it's a bit of a coping mechanism for us, and not just folks that are in my line of work, but in any line of work. We deal with stresses, and we see things happening. And I wanted to document that kind of for myself only. I really didn't intend it to be a book. And then it took several years, and several years into it, I really had a lot on paper, and I really enjoyed the experience of writing the things that had happened to me. And I put satire in it. I put humor in it because, again, that's a coping mechanism.
Absolutely.
We have to laugh at things that have happened, not disrespectfully, and certainly not everything is funny. And I tried to be very careful that if something wasn't funny, I didn't want to purposely add humor to it.
Absolutely.
But I wanted to go back and read about the things that I had done, and I wanted to get a laugh out of it, because that's kind of how we cope with things. But I enjoyed writing it so much that when it was all done, when I had a decent draft, I said, you know what, I'm gonna see if somebody would like to read this. and I put it out there, and very, very quickly it got picked up, and it turned into the book that it is today.
Oh,
So it's, it's not your average story about a big city police officer. It's not your average detective story, because a lot of things that we dealt with were very mundane. We have the same type of problems that everybody else does,
absolutely.
but we're just very rural, and it doesn't happen as often. And certainly there were some very serious things that I dealt with, that I wanted to put in the book. And it turned out to be a fairly popular book. So I was very happy with that. And again, it was more of my way of dealing with what I saw over those years of being a police officer.
That's great. That's very great. I love the sense of these books. They really sound very intriguing. And I want
Thank
to
you.
ask, do you have copies there with you? You can show to the camera so viewers can
I
see.
certainly do. Yeah. So this one right here is Peanut Butter Memories.
Oh, beautiful.
And again, I did the cover. That's my design.
Yeah.
And that's my artwork on there. And beneath it are all the badges that I ever wore and all the agencies that I worked for.
Oh, wow.
But it is a funny read when the humor is appropriate. So there are parts in it that are not funny.
Yeah.
And because you just, it would be disrespectful to find humor in all of it.
Yeah.
There's
How about the other books? Can you show them to the camera too?
Sure, absolutely. So there's 2 seasons. The first of the 2 books.
Yeah.
Again, that's my cover design. That actually is a very popular design. It's an outhouse. It's a bathroom.
Oh.
And if you grew up in the 1970s in my area of the country, and it's very possible that you didn't have indoor plumbing. So that's where that comes from. And the cover of each of the books have something to do with the book themselves. So if you read the book, you understand what the cover means.
Yeah.
So
that's Ma's Diner.
In Ma's Diner, there's the cover to Ma's Diner. That's the diner in the background. And if you read the 2 books, you're going to find a bear.
Oh.
And there's some adventures with the bear.
Oh.
And that's why the bear is sitting there in front of the diner. The bear becomes a big character in these books.
Oh, wow. That's great. They really sound quite intriguing, quite interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, David, apart from Matt's Diner, apart from 2 seasons and Peanut Butter Memoirs, do you have any other works you've authored or you're currently working on?
Yeah, growing up in Maine, in fact, the city that I grew up in, which is Bangor, Maine, there was a very famous author, and his name is Stephen King.
Oh.
And I think you've read one of his books recently. He's very famous in this country. A lot of his books have been made into movies, and he writes in the horror. He's a horror writer, the horror genre. And because I grew up, and I've met him once, and because I grew up in that same city, I wanted to take a try at the horror genre. So my next book is going to be a horror novel. It might work, it might not. People may like it, they may not. They may tell me to stick to humor, and that's okay. But I'm going to give it a try and see if that works. So that's the one I'm working on right now. And it's not done yet. I'm working on the cover right now, and I'm actually working on editing the first draft. But we're going to give it a try. We're going to see, if I can switch genres. And there's another reason for that. It's because my books really are for the entertainment of other people. If one person picks up my book and likes it, then I've really achieved my goal. And so, if you like humor, I've got a book for you. If you like memoirs, I've got a memoir for you to read. Now I want to switch genres and try to, appease those folks too, and see if that works out for me.
And I love that. I love the fact that you're trying to, blend all of these genres together and kind of, let readers pick what they're interested in, from horror to humor, to this, to that. It's amazing. I love that.
Well, thank you very much. Like I said, I really think we need books, and I really think we need an escape from everyday life. And I think
Mm,
we need to, smile, and we need to laugh, and
absolutely.
maybe not take ourselves so seriously. And that's what the books are meant to do.
That's great. Now, David, could you tell us what publishing is like for a published author like yourself? What are the challenges that you've encountered in terms of marketing your books, and what are the mediums you've utilized so far in promoting your books?
Yeah, absolutely. And Peter, we mentioned this a few minutes ago. It is tough. It's very tough.
Very tough.
It's you know it. It's a that's why we have other jobs, because we're never going to make a living just on books, because it is so difficult. And
Oh,
I really enjoyed the publishing experience. I enjoyed that part of it, but obviously the challenges are the marketing. The challenges are getting your books out there and getting your name out there, getting that positive feedback. And because, unfortunately, with every other technology that we have today, there aren't a lot of readers. It's not something that, people think to do anymore, is pick up a
yeah,
book. It's so
yeah.
much easier to pick up your phone or play a video game or watch it occur on television. So, you've really got to play to the audience. You really got to, and maybe I'm a little bit more fortunate, where I do have this background in art, so I can do drawings and I can
Oh,
do other things. So I do my own marketing. I design my own ads. And what I'll do is I'll design an ad, I'll do a drawing that has something to do with the book, and I'll put it out there, and I'll see how people respond to it.
mm,
And if they don't respond to that particular ad, then I change it, and then I put it back out there again. So I'm constantly marketing the books. I use social media, as we all do.
mm,
Um,
yeah,
but I'm gauging my audience, and I'm gauging what people, latch on to. Like I
yeah.
said, with peanut butter memories, people really didn't like that cover.
Oh,
So I changed the cover, hoping that the new cover will gain me a new audience.
mm,
The cover to Two Seasons, that clicked right away with readers. The very first feedback I got was, "That's a great cover." So I knew that that's what I had to use. That's what I had to draw on, was the strength of the cover of the book.
yeah,
Um, so I think that that's the biggest challenge, is marketing ourselves, in comparison to publishing. And certainly publishing a book was a long journey.
absolutely.
Um, we edit, edit, edit. Peter, we read our own work over and over and
Over and
over
over
again. And
again.
yeah, and then we get other people to read it and give their opinions. And so that is a long part of the journey. But that
Absolutely.
journey's not over once it's published. You've got to get it out there and keep getting it out there. And
Mm,
it's just, I think it's, it takes years and years and years, um, before somebody might notice your work, and they might, so it might be 10 years from now, somebody says, "Hey, I really like Two Seasons." Well, I appreciate that, because I wrote that 15 years ago.
no,
So I
that's
think that's the
no, that is
challenge.
funny. Oh, that's great. Now, David, I also want to ask you, is there anything that you love to share with the viewers about your books that we couldn't mention in this interview? And I'd love the viewers to know.
Yeah, again, my books are just meant to make you smile. Realizing that if somebody was going to read my memoir, certainly they probably want to, they want to have an interest in the career that I was in.
Yeah.
Um, so, if that career doesn't interest you, I understand you may not want to read that. But if you want to read something funny, and I make fun of myself in that book,
Oh,
I'm not beyond making mistakes myself. But if you just want, with the other books, with Two Seasons and with Ma's Diner, to me, their only goal is to make you smile.
oh.
Um, a friend of mine said once to me, not too long ago, he said, "They're bathroom books. You go into your bathroom to do your business, you pick up my book, you might do your business a little sooner." So, But those two books are very silly reads. They're very funny reads. They're not to be paid, they're not serious novels. So again, I think everybody has a genre that they resonate to. Some
Yes.
people, some people like poetry,
Mm.
which is your genre.
Yeah.
Some people like horror novels. Some people like fantasy. Fantasy novels are very big. Mine are
Mm.
for the people that just want to smile and not take life too seriously.
Mm.
Um, so, I mean, that would be my message to the readers. But one thing I did want to mention, Peter, is that I want to give you a shout out because you just came out with a book, A Cry for Mercy.
Yeah.
And I read that, and that is an excellent book.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I mean, that is just a great book. And I realize it's part of a
Yeah.
three series of books. And I'm looking so forward to reading that next one.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. That makes me blush.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. That was great. That was great.
Now, David, I want to ask you, as a published author, what sort of advice do you offer other writers who are still struggling with publishing a book? What did you tell people in this category?
What I would tell them is don't give up. Just don't give up. I think we are our own worst critics.
Hmm.
And I know that when I'm writing a book, and again, we've talked about how we edit our own work over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I think I'm my own toughest critic. And, that's the message I would give to other people is don't take yourself too seriously and don't get discouraged. When I wrote the first book and I sent it out to see if there was any interest in it, I got all the rejection letters.
Oh.
I got all of that, so it took a long time to get it out there. And I had, suggestions of how to change my books and how to edit them.
Yeah.
And I think that can be very discouraging to somebody who's a first time writer. I think it can be easy to get discouraged with
Hmm.
that type of criticism. And my advice would be don't stop and don't give up. And don't change what you're doing just because somebody else wants you to change it.
Hmm.
We all write from our hearts.
Absolutely.
It's our work for other people to look at, but at the end of the day, it's our work.
Absolutely.
It's how we want to write. Don't change that for anybody.
Hmm.
Write how you write. It will work for you. It may be a long journey, but you'll get there.
Oh, wow. I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for adding it. It's such a
Absolutely.
great advice, and I'm hopeful that viewers, including myself, would love to utilize it. Thank you so much. So, David,
You're
where can
welcome.
we get a copy of your book, in case people are interested in getting a copy?
Absolutely. Amazon is my publisher. I publish on Amazon, so you obviously can go to there. But my books are also available on all major online retailers. You can go to my website,
Yeah.
www.twoseasons.org. And you can order them right from me. Yeah, every major retailer carries my books right now. So all you have to do is type in the title and the author, and it'll pop up somewhere.
That's great. And I've left a link in the description part of this interview for viewers who would love to get a copy of David Wilson's book. So thank you so much, David, for accepting the invitation to be featured on English Literature. It's a pleasure having
Oh,
you on the show.
it was my pleasure, my complete pleasure. I'm so happy that I finally got to be here.
Yeah, it's my joy too. Thank you.
Absolutely.